It was 1 year ago, on June 19th, that Big Blue Bubble released the long-anticipated Fire Oasis, a follow-up to the previous island, Fire Haven, into My Singing Monsters. The island saw the reintroduction of 6 fire hybrids, as well as the return of 9 other monsters from islands prior. While the island itself is visually stunning and probably the best island from a visual standpoint, the selection of monsters is, well, polarizing to say the least. But I'm not here to talk about what the fans think of them, but rather, I'm here to talk about what I think of them. Today, I will be ranking the 15 main monsters of Fire Oasis, as well as the other 2, based on what they contribute or don't contribute to the song. Similar to the likes of my favorite MSM video series, Mr. Zamboni's Your Singing Monsters. Keep in mind that this is my opinion, and you will disagree with me at least one point in this video. Without further ado, let's blow this joint. Get it? Blow? Like blowing glass? Is, you know... hey, let's stop trying to be funny. Let me start off this segment by saying this one thing. The seasonals are notorious for repeating their parts from other islands on Gold Island, Twinkleton. And sometimes you get a repeat part of the previous island. That sometimes is what happened with Gobblegord on this island. While his vocal performance does sound somewhat different from that on Firehaven, it's really not that much, and it still shares the exact same rhythm as Firehaven. And its placement in the song is something I question really often, as its triplet melody would sound much better during the ending of the song with Kana and Wink. Gobblegord's case of quote-unquote seasonal syndrome lands it at the bottom, and it kills me to see just how much potential this thing had. Okay, who saw this coming? No bottom of the list would be complete without the septet of, well, whatever they are, the Dipsters. If I had to give these little guys some positive feedback, it would be that their composition is much better than the previous island. However, that's really it. The Dipsters are still the Dipsters, by which they still drown out several of the other monsters in the verse, and they contribute pretty much nothing to the song. What's even worse is that they only have one track, which is looped throughout the verse, and it sounds really off when you put it against Waddle, Fangler, and Willoughby, who all have 2 separate tracks for the verse. While it might just be something of an improvement over Firehaven, the Dipsters are still the Dipsters. Okay, now with those 2 out of the way, we can finally talk about the core 15. What better place to start than the ending? Yeah, there's really nothing wrong with that. I'll just stash it away in my mind. Speaking of stashes, Wink is the weakest monster of the core 15. Addressing the big cycloptic furry elephant in the room, Wink's tone is something that I couldn't wrap my head around when the teaser was released, and I still don't understand to this day. Seriously, why is it so rough, gravelly, and borderline atonal on this island? It really would have been much more pleasing to hear it using Cave Island sound font, do it better with Kana, but sadly it doesn't do that, and it mostly ends up dragging down its verse due to its tone being unfitting and it being louder than Kana for whatever reason. I'd argue that this is Wink's worst island, but I suppose that contributing negatively is better than contributing nothing at all. Anyway, these next 4 monsters can be grouped together, and they're kind of interchangeable, so they'll be kind of subjective. You guys are really going to hate me for this. Taking the number 14 spot is Fangler. This island marks the beginning of Fangler's downfall. With what was once a pretty good monster that wasn't anything special is now, well, Fangler and MSM won. For whatever reason, Fangler sings incredibly fast on this island and Psychic Island, which is really not its strong suit, taking a lot of lessons in we band Fangler. And also, it's really quiet when it sings, leading it to be just glorified chord fodder and getting overshadowed by Waddle, Willoughby, and especially the Dipsters. Its low volume also leads it to have a pretty hard rhythm to make out. At least Fangler got its redemption on Bone Island, or else this fish would have been at the very bottom of the barrel. What happened to you, Waddle? You went from being one of the best monsters on Cloud Island to this. For some reason, Waddle on Fire Oasis is an unnaturally deep voice, which I feel works much better on something like Fangler. And speaking of, since Fangler does what this monster is better at, Waddle does what Fangler could do better, which is being a melodic monster instead of just an incredibly fast chord fodder. But what I can say for Waddle that I can't say about Fangler is that at least it has a melody that's more akin to something like The Continent. And it also sings more. Huh? Are you sure this monster is supposed to be the boss? Alright. And we have another monster that fell from grace. this time being the island's boss, Snizer. Back on Space and Cloud Islands, Snizer filled the empty base space that was left by monsters such as Souza, Toejammer, and Woolly. Here, it's incredibly quiet and doesn't fill in any of the space left by Woolly, Mammoth, and Quibble. Not helping this monster is the fact that it plays the same rhythm as Mammoth, like that problem somehow carried over from Cold Island. And it's rendered completely unnecessary in the presence of the castle base. However, it does try to differentiate itself by taking on a much more punchy sound font, which I kinda like. So at least it tried. Oh, Boskus, how I pay you. At its best, Boskus is probably the most fun monster, considering its goofy sound and even goofier design. Unfortunately, Boskus kinda lost all of its personality on this island, as its sound is a lot less flubber. What makes it worse is that Boskus only plays about 2 notes during its 2 tracks. But the funny thing about Boskus here is that it serves as a better bass monster than a lot of the other monsters that play along with it. But still, Boskus kind of fell from grace here. In fact, Snizer, Waddle, and Fangle are all kind of interchangeable here since they all took a pretty hard drop in quality. At least this isn't Boskus' worst style. Oh. Maybe it is. Now here's a monster whose quality tends to vary from island to island, with this being one of its weaker outings. Addressing the biggest flaw this monster has, Tweedle sounds drastically different on this island than it does on the other islands. It sounds much more abrasive and loud compared to the other Tweedles that are much softer and gentle to listen to. But on the plus side, it harmonizes, kind of, with another monster, creating a somewhat needlessly aggressive vocal duet in the verse. Now what is this monster? Well, let's take a look at it. There are times when growl yelling works in the context of a song, like Cave Island, but unfortunately, growl yelling here doesn't really fit into the context with Fire Oasis. Or maybe it does. The island's really weird in that sense. And with the absence of Willoughby in those verse, it's kind of tasked with being the harmony monster while Tweedle sings the melody and Quibble supports it. Growl isn't really meant to be chord fodder because on Islands Past it had monsters like Souza and Flugel to back it up. Oh well, at least I can actually hear it this time. About time we had a decent island for this monster. Ma has a very bad habit of only playing in parts of verses instead of full verses. However, on this island, Ma is able to carry a tune throughout almost the entirety of the verse it plays in. Unfortunately, what brings it down is the lack of a distinguishable climax for it to build up to, as Ma is known for building up to the climax of other islands, such as Plant Island. While it's not completely a redemption from this monster's struggles, Ma on Fire Oasis is serviceable. Now here's a monster that hardly ever gets praised for its contributions to the songs it plays in, however minimalistic they may be. Being one of 2 monsters on this island that play percussion, Pango is usually the one who gets ignored most. While Pango's first track is nothing to scoff at, only playing on the updated beat 1 in the bar, its second 2 tracks make up for it. The second track adds a complex, almost syncopated rhythm to its verse, and the third track is able to help carry the verse with Wink, Kana, and especially Woolly. It does its job as a castanet monster much better than it does on other islands. And would you look at that, another monster that got some redemption from its previous blunders, this time being the face of the fire elementals, Kana. Kana on Firehaven was incredibly simplistic and didn't blend well with most of the other monsters. But Kana more than makes up for it here, because for the first time in a while, Kana takes the melody, though it still has to share it with Wink. And its voice sounds much more pleasant than Wink's. It also blends nicely with the other monsters, unlike on Firehaven where it clashes pretty much everything. And its rhythm, despite making Kana into essentially a feminine by sonorous, does make a serviceable melody. When these next 2 monsters duet with each other, you know the island is going to be a fun one. One of these monsters is Toejammer. The monster is known for duetting with Mammoth on some of the more famous islands, such as Continent and Plain Island. And when the 2 don't duet, Toejammer is otherwise very lackluster. Thankfully on this island, the iconic duo returns, and not only does Toejammer duet with Mammoth, but it also goes well with Quibble, Woolby, and Snizer, who all play a similar tune to Mammoth. Hearing Toejammer do what it does best on an island is a treat, but I really wish it played in more than one verse. And there's the other end of the duet, Mammoth. Mammoth is known for being not just a bass monster, but the bass monster on pretty much every island it goes to, except I guess Air and Fairy. It provides a fun bass line that goes well with Toejammer, as well as some of the other monsters who I've mentioned in Toejammer's segment. The only reason I put it above Toejammer is that it sings much more than its squishy blue companion. But at the end of the day, both are pretty solid on this island. My god, I can't wait for the next magical island with Mammoth and Potbelly can do it again. Hopefully. I thought Maw got a redemption on this island, but its redemption is nothing compared to how much of an improvement Kongle is over pretty much every other island it's on. This is easily Kongle's best island for me, which isn't really saying a lot because Kongle has a pretty sucky track record. On almost every other island it's on, Kongle is another forgotten percussion monster in the likes of Pango, Drumpler, Noggins, Shrub, and Scuffs. But here, it's the main percussionist, and it does way more than the basic rhythms it does on the natural islands. It carries the song for a lot of the verses it plays, and its fast, complex rhythm is fun to listen to, and an accurate portrayal of what a conga, bongo, bazinga drum is supposed to be. The only real nitpick I have with Kongle here is that it should have gotten a singing part, but oh well. You did well, Kongle. In retrospect, I should have placed Quibble a bit lower for being essentially a glorified mammoth, but Quibble kind of belongs here. Much like Cold Island, where I absolutely dread mentioning him, Quibble does what Mammoth does, but more complex and, dare I say, better than Mammoth itself. It fills in a lot of the empty space in Mammoth and Woolby's opening verse, but it doesn't just do that. It also supports the many vocalists in what is arguably my least favorite part of the song. The verse with Glow, Tweedle, Maw, and Boskus for those curious. In fact, that verse without Quibble would beat those four vocals, only be supported by the percussionist and Snizer, who we've clarified is not very good. That's kind of a testament to his quality on the island. I hope you're watching this, because guess who is the best monster? Yep, it's Woolby. As is the case on Cloud Island, it fires, fire, on almost all cylinders, being the foundation on which the song is built, as well as a bit of added percussion when its feet touch the ground. Though in past instances, Woolby was kind of lacking in bass, Woolby compensates for it here by playing lower notes in order to suffice bass that other verses lack. Even in its first two verses where it isn't as bassy, it still has an excellent support system with Quibble in the castle bass. Let's not forget that this thing has 5 tracks on this island, so it goes well with pretty much everything, including monsters that it doesn't play with, like Boskus. I don't think that anyone will disagree with me that Woolby is the best monster on Fire Oasis. As for Fire Oasis as a whole, I have mixed opinions on this island. On one hand, it's very fun to listen to, and that's mostly due to fun monsters such as Mammoth and Kongle. But on the other hand, the showcase monsters, being the fire elementals, are really polarizing. While you have amazing monsters here such as Quibble, Woolby, and Kongle, there are quite a few monsters that aren't up to snuff with their previous incarnations, like Boskus, Snizer, Waddle, and Fangler, and some that are just flat out ridiculous. Looking at you, Wink. Leaving this island to balance out just being okay. I'd give this island a 6 out of 10. If you want to check out more content like this, go check out Mr. Zamboni and his Your Singing Monsters series. I don't plan on doing more of these, so please don't go requesting for me to do more lists like this.